Hello and welcome to another episode of LGOtv Big Talk. And why Big Talk? Because I hate small talk. My guest today is Jenny Hutt. And if you want to talk to a talker, you got to talk to somebody who hosts a radio show. She's been hosting a radio show for like, what, 20 years
No,
almost
15,
at this point?
15 and a half years. Yeah, which
15 and a half.
Yeah, feels like 20. It doesn't. It feels like 15 and a half. But it's funny that you say that's a talker because when I'm not on the air, I'm not such a talker.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was doing long distance running years ago, and I somehow started following the guy who runs the XM Radio's metal station, and he was also a runner. And at one point, I tweeted to him, and I was like, "Hey, what's your running playlist?" And he was like, "I actually don't listen to music when I run. It's the only time in my life I don't listen to music."
Yeah, I get that. I think when I go walking, I like to listen to a book on tape or a podcast when I can like come up with one. I try to keep a running list of things I need to listen to that are talk based. I don't know why. And then I'll like go to music after. But yeah, like I like to watch television on the treadmill, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So you were on the treadmill. I mean, I should
just lose
give your bio.
This is terrible. No, I shouldn't.
No, I can hear you.
Oh, it's you.
I can hear you here.
You're lost. I'm here. There you are.
I don't know. We're all here together. Okay, well, let me give the folks who are listening just a little bit of your bio. So, Jennifer Koppelman Hutt is the host of Just Jenny for 15 and a half years. We've now determined. She also she does these Weight Wednesdays. She gets on social media every Wednesday. She talks all the time about body image, about losing weight, about who she is, about how your identity is not wrapped up in the number on the scale, and that it's never too late at any age to start moving. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. She just mentioned the treadmill. We're going to talk about that. And I also want to talk to you about bunny eyes. If you're looking at my glasses right now, if you're watching us and you're like, that's so cool, these glasses are incredible. What I love about them is that I'm sitting here and I'm looking at your bio on my phone and I don't have to take these off. And my favorite thing, because, you know, when you're in your midlife, your eyes start to go, so you need these reading glasses to look at the things like this. But also you don't sleep at night because, you know, menopause. So I can just take the little side off and I can lay my head on the pillow and I can read until I fall asleep. So we want to talk about being an inventor and what that's like, and just having that creative side of you. So let's start early on. Yes. I love the first line in your bio says that you always knew you'd end up on the radio, but you thought it would be your singing voice.
Yeah, so I used to sing when I was a kid. I was in all the school plays. And when I got to college, I thought I can't be in theater because the theater people are weird. They wear all black.
Yes.
And I need to be cool. Now, this is the most absurd way of thinking because, and first of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's very, very kind of you to even care to talk to me. But it was such a silly way to think because the coolest people actually were the theater kids. Right. And I mean, as an adult, like the kids that I'm drawn to, and I see my children with their friends, or I think the theater kids are just the best. And I only wear black or gray.
Right, you live in New York. I was going to say.
The whole thing is so silly. I was at Tufts in Massachusetts. And so I didn't really follow that in college, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And then after, I thought, I always liked using my voice. So like, I would call into radio stations and try to provide like a voice and talk to the DJs off air. And this is way back in the late 80s, early 90s, because I mean, I'm 51, so I'm a little bit older than you, but that's what we did then. We would call radio stations to get our voices on the radio. But after college, I went to law school. It was like, I went to law school and then I decided maybe I'd act, maybe I'd be a voiceover actress, but then I just didn't really did that. I met my husband in an acting class and then got married and then got pregnant and then had babies. So I took time off then did a little lawyering and then ended up in broadcast. So it was not like a direct route.
Yeah, well, you know, law school, of course, is always the place for people who have no idea what they want to do.
It really is. It really, by the way, except in the case of, I don't really talk much about my children except sort of abstract, but my son has wanted to go to law school since he went to college, and he's going to law school in the fall right out of college, but he really wants to be a lawyer.
So I dropped out of law school in the middle of my first semester, mostly because I first of all, I walked in and I hated it. And then I started dating somebody who was terrible for me, because that's of course what you do in those
That
moments in your
is
life.
what you do.
You're miserable. And I joke around that he had incredible taste in exactly two things. One being girlfriends, obviously, but the second being these unknown presidential hopefuls from tiny towns in Arkansas.
He just knew.
He just knew. And
Wow.
he brought me to this campaign office in Gainesville, a little tiny strip mall. And there was a little TV of then Governor Bill Clinton giving this idea, which turned into AmeriCorps. And I was like, that makes sense. And I dropped out and I went. But I dropped out. I was open to that opportunity, that idea, because I went to law school not knowing what I wanted to do with it, not wanting to be there. So for your son, like I tell people all the time, like law school is great if you're going for a reason.
No,
I went because I was like,
and I kept my license. I mean, I'm licensed and in good standing, and I'm happy that I have it. But it wasn't my passion. It wasn't. He's much more. He wants to do good things with the law. He has a real passion for things like the Constitution, but sort of on the way more liberal side than the other.
Well, it's good to have a passion about the Constitution right now when the Constitution's being eroded left and right. So we need more. I mean, Obama was a constitutional scholar.
Exactly. That's kind of where he is, my son. So yeah.
I think that's terrific. So you, but you come from a creative family. So were they excited about law school as an option? Sort of.
I mean, my dad was a music business guy. So he ran record labels and he founded a record label, and he was a producer of a lot of artists that you and I grew up with. And so I was around creativity constantly, and he had an incredible ear for a hit. And he still has a really good ear for a hit, but he's 81 and still working, but not in the music business so much. And so we didn't really grow up in a creative environment, meaning the artists weren't necessarily in-house, though my brother and I were a bit creative in nature or in spirit. So my dad, though, wanted all of us to go to law school. Like that was sort of his wish.
Because it was the business. He was an entrepreneur.
He was about business, And so regardless of where we wound up, he felt like if we had that education, then that would help guide us in our decision making and help us when we were confronted with things that maybe had sort of legal undertones, and we'd understand how to read a contract. And I think in that way, it was definitely or is definitely helpful.
Yeah, I would imagine, one of my first mentors, who died prematurely, he was an attorney, but never practiced law in his life. And he was the person I went to go work for in Bill Clinton's White House. And he used to say all the time that, he went to University of Michigan Law School. He never practiced law, never wanted to practice law, but just having the knowledge of law made him a better businessman.
That's right. And that's where my dad didn't have a lot of education. I mean, that wasn't how he was raised to go to high school, obviously, and go to college, but it's unclear whether he graduated. I mean, it's like he was a businessman and is a businessman. He's so smart, but he was sort of self-taught rather than more traditional schooling.
But I mean, that's it, right? Like that was the age. Like it was about the hustle. It was about don't worry about this. I got this for you, right? I mean,
it's still about the hustle, don't you think?
It is. I do think it's still about the hustle. I mean, so I was reading and preparing for this interview, and obviously, I know your brother's work. I read about your father. I saw that your father's uncle patented the egg carton. I mean, I was like, "There's
so crazy."
Creativity.
So that was sort of the thing when I was growing up, and we knew my great uncle's cousin Morris Koppelman was the inventor of the egg crate or the egg carton, the egg crate. And for a while, this was like, is this folklore or is this real? And in the age of the internet, we confirmed it was actually real, and which was very cool. But again, I think like fabricating widgets wasn't. I never thought that was really in my DNA. So inventing was a whole other wild ride that I certainly didn't anticipate happening to me, or even just that pivot or that addition to my like a side hustle when I came up with the original idea for BunnyEyez when I was, I guess, 47. I was like, that was not, I was open to it, I suppose, because I felt a little flutter in my belly, but it wasn't something that I ever thought I would do.
Let's talk about that flutter in your belly, because I think that is a fascinating moment. I
Really is.
interviewed Whitney Johnson last
Uh-huh.
week for this, and Whitney's, one of like the top business thinkers in the world. And she wrote a book called Disrupt Yourself, which is all about the S curve, where like you're doing something and you don't know what you're doing, and it's slow, it's slow, it's slow. And then you hit a moment,
Yeah.
suddenly it goes up and you're like, everything clicks and you know
Yes.
what you're doing and it feels good and it's awesome. And then you get to the top of the curve
Yes.
and it flattens out again. And you're like, maybe a little bored, maybe you're
Yes.
kind of, settling, you're complacent, and you have a choice. You can either jump to another S curve and not know what the hell you're doing, or you can just stay there. And what usually happens when you stay there is you self-sabotage because you're not excited about the work anymore. And so, you don't do as well, and then you just get fired. But there is this moment where you can't unknow an idea. You can't unsee a potential. And that flutter in your belly is, I think, the wind in your wings that's like,
It's so
go,
cool. Yeah.
go.
Yeah. It's actually, it was really, I don't know another time that I had that experience in my life. Maybe when I first started the radio show with my ex co-host, so back in 2005, that initial start was, but I felt like that was nerves, because I certainly didn't know that we were on to something. Neither of us had done broadcasts, and Sirius XM was so new back in 2005, and we had launched before even Howard Stern. But with Bunny Eyes, I think I was at that place where I was feeling like, though I love doing my show and I love connecting with my audience and my listeners who feel like friends, because radio is so intimate and there's this
Yes.
back and forth. Social media is giving us this way to connect on and off air. But I was feeling tired of me. I was like, it's enough about me. Like, I don't want to talk about myself anymore. I'm so over me. Like, I'd had it. I'm like, I'm boring. That all those feelings that I think most of us have, if not every day, every so often. And I think because I was on a subconscious level searching for something, I was open to an idea showing up. Because again, I'm not like a physics person. I'm not by nature an inventor. I never thought to launch a company or a brand. It's just never been a thing. But I've colored my hair for a lot of years. By 51, I'm significantly gray. My eyesight started going at 44. I had perfect vision forever until that moment. 44, all of a sudden, blind as a bat. And I found, as a working mother, that every time I got my hair colored, I was completely irritated and annoyed that I had to sit for 90 minutes, not be able to read my phone or read news or be in the, like, I felt like it was a giant waste of time, even though I was
And
coloring
just
my
make
hair.
small talk the whole time. You're like, I talk all day. I
I
can't
mean,
do this. It's so inefficient.
Yeah. So I started thinking about this idea, like, why weren't there glasses like from the olden days, those lorgnettes, those that people used to
The
hold to the
pince
opera.
nez, the ones that
Yeah,
are like the
no,
ones that sit on your nose.
well,
Oh,
those
these,
were
the ones on the,
ugly, right? The ones that were sitting on your nose, I
right.
thought they were ugly, so I didn't right. So those. So I was like, why don't they exist? And I think I told my husband and my son, and this was probably in April. And I might have told my daughter too, but I'm not sure she cared. And so at the time, and so, but my son was like, that's really cool, like the idea. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I have this idea. And it just sat, and this was where the flutter started. And I got afraid to talk to anybody about it other than my son, my husband, and my daughter. Like, that was it. I was like, I'm not going to tell anyone because someone will steal the idea. First of all, no one was stealing the idea, A. And B, it is a giant pain in the ass to launch a company and to invent a product and to patent that product and to do all of that stuff, which we've done. So I just sat with it for about 2 months. But like, I was like, I know I have to come up with this. I don't know what it's going to look like or how it's going to be, but I know I have to make this, which again, totally not who I am. And then my sister and I, we don't usually get our hair colored at the same time. We happen to be at the salon at the same time. I usually get my hair colored at home. And she was next to me and she looked visibly annoyed as well. And I was like, why are you, what's wrong? She's like, oh, I'm so frustrated. I can't read. So at that moment,
I'm on to something.
I was like, oh my God, Stacey, I'm freaking out because my sister's name is Stacey. I was like, because I have this idea. And this is, I think we should be able to make really, really cute reading glasses that you can hold in your hand. And so this is all I thought about at first, was just this idea of holding them in your hand. And she was like, oh my God, we need to do this. So we go on Google and Amazon. I don't know which is more important, Google or Amazon. And I start looking up whether anybody has these, if they exist. They don't exist, which again, what?
Shocking.
How could they not exist? Like, I'm not brilliant. Like, how could they not exist? Like, that's just weird. But they didn't exist. So my sister then said, I have an idea. I know this woman who's in eyewear. So within, I would say, 5 days, I made a prototype using chopsticks and broken glasses.
Perfect.
I have it somewhere. Yeah. And I met with this woman who became our partner, and she was already in eyewear. So she was off to China for her business. And she came back within 3 weeks. This is in now July-ish. Came back within 3 weeks or so with our first prototype. And the prototype was, of course, what you were showing, that the glasses, you can wear them, you can tilt the front of the frame, and you can flip the temples to hold them in your hand, so that if you're getting your hair colored, you can read like this, and then the hair color doesn't get stuck on the temple or on that little like plastic sleeve thing.
Yep.
That then I feel like it's not adhering to my hair. And what's the point of that?
Exactly.
So,
I mean, like if you're showing a little bit of root, then you got to go back sooner. And if the temples push it out.
Yeah.
Not
so
good.
then, so from there, it was really fast. We launched June of 2018. And the best part was that people reacted exactly as we hoped. Like women like you were like, oh my God, I can lie down in bed on the side and flip the temple, and then it doesn't dig into my head, and can tilt the front of the frame for all those reasons, and hold them for the hair color, or for getting your hair cut, or for when you do a mask, if you want to read with the mask on. I mean, there's so many different reasons and ways to use BunnyEyez. And it was very, very exciting. But again, like you're like that book you were talking about, you know, we're close to 3 years in. Our business does well, knock wood, poo, poo, poo. We are self-funded, but always working to grow. And with any business that's selling something, you have to constantly stay engaged, because it can get really sort of static, because you get these great, great highs, and then you get like the lull. And that can be really frustrating. And with a pandemic and with whatever else, we manufacture in China, there's a lot to deal with, but I love it. And we named it after our mom, who passed away almost 13 years ago. And so it's just, that's been a real reinvigorating thing in my life, for sure.
And when you started it, did you start it because you were like, this is a thing, I bet some women need this, I'm interested in doing something in addition to the radio, because I feel like I've got that, I know it? Or did you start it like, this is going to be a business, we're going to do a business? Like, did you start it with a plan of revenue, or was it just, let's see where it goes?
I mean, when people talk about business plans and they're like, you have to make a business plan before you begin, I'm like,
I've
really?
never made one single business plan.
I'm like, really? Because there was no business plan. There's still no business plan. You know, sorry. But
I was like, give me a cocktail napkin, I'll write up the business plan right now.
Well, by the way, with my partner, it was a handshake and a napkin. I mean, it was a complete, she signed a non-disclosure in a diner. When I got out of the shower, put on a sweatsuit, went to the diner. My sister knew her from the school parking lot. I mean, it was really a very sort of meant to be kind of connection.
That's the moment though, where you're like, you're my people. We can do this.
It was just right.
Well, like if she showed up with like a 17-page contract,
no, that would not be different. No. But to answer your question, no, I think what it was that I needed the product. Yeah. I needed these glasses. And so because I needed them, I had to make them. And then I felt like people would love them. And I also felt like anyone, once we started the process and I got a little more okay with telling people our idea, I was still very nervous and locked down, because that's how you feel when you think you've got a great idea, this like worry feeling. Yes. I never thought I was going to leave radio, because I love my radio gig and this was my side hustle. But I started to share it with people I valued, people whose opinion I valued. So like Adam Glassman, who's the creative director of Oprah's magazine, is a real dear friend of mine and one of the best people on the planet, and always a straight shooter. So anything I've talked to him about throughout the years, whether it was what I was going to wear, or what I was thinking about this, or a line of pet balls, which in my head was like, that's to make some quick cash, you know? He was like, yeah, I don't know. But the minute I showed him the prototype, he freaked out. And he was just like, oh my God. And that became sort of the standard reaction from people. And while there were some naysayers, they were way fewer naysayers than there were people who were sort of like, oh my God, I need to be a part of this. Can I invest? And my sister and I were like, no, like we're going to just try to launch this thing. My husband gave me cash for my part of it. My sister had cash, we just sort of launched it. And as we're self-funded. So that's how we did it. And it worked. It just kind of worked. And then Hoda Copy really put us on the map about 2 weeks after we launched, because we are coworkers at SiriusXM, and I've known Hoda for many, many years. So when I saw her in the hallway one day, I gave her a pair right before we launched. And I think I gave her 2 pairs. I just said choose. Like I dumped them on the floor, because back then nobody thought about germs. Just threw them on the floor of the hallway at SiriusXM and was like, what color do you want? What shape do you want? And when she put them on, I showed her how they work. She was like, oh my God, I'm going to totally, like, I want to put these on too, whatever. And I was like, okay, Hoda, have a great day. Like I didn't even, I was like, maybe she'll put them on social media. Like I didn't even think anything of it. And 2 weeks later, she was talking about them on the Today Show without telling me. So I was like out visiting friends, and my phone was blowing up. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So yeah. And then that was a wild day. And that kind of started that really made huge, but Oprah Magazine also featured us early on. And Adam was really, out of everybody, like just the best cheerleader in the whole world.
It's so important to have those people. I've had cheerleaders in my life who also have acted as the I mean the ass kickers, right? The ones that say like, yeah, that's not good enough, or that's not going to work, but maybe think about doing a different way, or come back, like it's got to be better, come back when it's better. And then you do, and they just champion the hell out of you. So to be able to have somebody who plays both roles, I think is so huge. It's so important, because when that person then tells you this is amazing, you're like, well, shit.
Yeah.
You're clearly onto something, because he wouldn't just blow smoke up my ass.
Yeah. And I was also, and I still am, I'm always excited to give them to friends and to people who don't have it. Like I'm incredibly proud of BunnyEyez, and I know that this company is going to continue to grow and just do better and better. And it's a legacy brand. I want this to be there for my children. And also in my mother's honor. I mean, it's just, and it's helpful. They're helpful. So
they are definitely helpful, I will say. I just a mention of Hoda. It's funny because when I was on your show after my book Limitless came out, afterwards you were like, thank you. And thank you for having me on your show also. That was so huge for me as like a total unknown in that moment. And I appreciate you taking the chance on me. You were like, hey, I'm happy to send you, a couple pairs. What do you like? Go to the site, pick out some pairs. And I did. You sent them to me, and then I posted on social media, and every one of my contemporary women were like, I love my BunnyEyez. I was like, how have you all heard of these already? And I hadn't. Like, I felt so left out. Like, I was like, how do I not know? But Hoda, it's really, so, as you know, I was on the Today Show when the book came out. It was literally my very first interview ever about the book, and my very first interview on TV ever was on the Today Show. And afterwards, people were like, you did so well. You were so amazing. And I was like, no, they were so amazing. Like I literally could have thrown up on myself, and they would have been like, cut to camera 2, clean me up, and go, because Hoda's such a professional.
Dynamic, wonderful girl, like just a great lady. She's as kind as you think she is. She's just a good person. I
mean, the warmth, like after we finished, we got up and she gave me a hug, and I was just like, I love you.
Yeah, she's just great. Fantastic. She's really great. That's actually who she is. So it's, she's a lovely, lovely person. That's real.
But I think some of that, though, I mean, we have to give you credit, right? Because people don't attract incredibly warm, generous people like Adam and Hoda were for you and have been along your journey, unless you've been a good person. Like that's not just about like connections and your job. Like people will they'll do a little something for you because you have an important job. They'll but they're not going to just go on the Today Show and talk about you without even telling you that. That was like effusive because she loved you and loved the product.
Oh, and I would have never asked her to. I mean, that's always been my biggest weakness is I have an inability to self-promote. And I've always felt like I don't know, almost embarrassed to be like, oh, come listen to my radio show. I mean, with my classes, because it's not me, it's like something that's going to help someone who gets to have them in their hands. It's been a lot easier, but I would never trade on sort of the relationships that I've made throughout the years that I've just made because of life and be like, you need to do this for me, because that just feels too ooky and just not not how I'm wired. So a lot of the PR that we got from the jump was because of the relationships that I've built. I am definitely a people connector. I'm definitely somebody who pretty much collects people like along the way in my life, for better or for worse. I mean, I have a pretty big network of people I met throughout the years, but I'm curious and I like to know about different people and I love to help people. So if somebody asks me for something, I mean, 9 out of 10 times I say yes, maybe 9.5 out of 10 times I say yes. Maybe now it's gotten to the point where I have started to set sort of healthy boundaries. Like if something feels weird, then I'll say no. But yes is just much easier for me when it comes to sort of doing a favor or making a call on someone's behalf. Like that sort of thing is natural. So it did feel really good when there were people who sort of stepped up and started posting. I mean, people like Deborah Messing posted about them early on, and that was, she saw them because the person who styled my hair and cut my hair for 25 years, Sebastian Scolarici, showed them to her. And we followed each other on social media, and she wanted them and was waiting for them to come out. So the day they came out, she posted about them. And like people were just incredibly generous. And I have Kaylee Cuoco too. I mean, I have so much gratitude because her makeup artist and best friend is my friend Jamie, and she had given them to her. And nobody told me they were doing any of this. Like I said, I had zero plan. So it wasn't like I was clever and had sort of gone around and said, I'm going to send them to. No, just like it was a really organic, incredible launch and a gift. And as I said, I feel incredibly grateful and would be happy to sort of help anybody in terms of their strategy for a launch. Just that relationships really matter, and hopefully you've had them along the way.
It resonates with me so deeply when I was giving a talk at an event. There were 2,500 people in the audience, 5 people. I was like the 4th, and then the 5th was Robin Roberts. And
she's great. Yeah.
Robin Roberts was only there because Malala was at the other 2 before, but had to go back to England to take finals. So Robin was now for the 3rd event. She was the closing speaker. And I have had a girl crush on Robin for a billion years. And the event was running a little long. And so I've now spoken at, the first event, the second event, and now we have the 3rd event. And it was 3 events over the course of 2 weeks with the same MC each time. And the event's running like 8 minutes behind, and I'm supposed to speak for 45 minutes. And right before I went out on stage, I said to the MC, hey, do you want me to speak for 37 and get you back on track? And he was like, oh, would you really?
Yeah.
Is that okay? And I was like, yeah, I don't care. Like, you're the star. I'm not the star. It doesn't matter. So I did that. And then right after I finished speaking, they whisked me away to go sign books. And by the time I got back, Robin was already on stage, and I had to leave to go to the airport. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to meet Robin. I love her. She's the best. And I should be on Good Morning America. She'd love me. And he was like, she would. Here, hands me my own book and says, sign this, make it really good, and I'll make sure she gets it. And I did, and he did. And then on the plane ride home, she read it and tweeted about it to millions of people. And I was like, and so the same experience of like my phone blowing up, but it's all to say, I didn't do that with an agenda, right?
Of course,
go into relationships. Right. And I think that the relationship piece of it is so important. So, but also on the other side of the relationship piece is that when you are someone who says yes, and you show up for people, and you do things just out of the goodness of your heart, people sometimes don't show up back. And that's really, it hurts a lot.
I mean, that happens all the time. But one of the life lessons I've learned in the past, I would say 5 years or 10 years, is that people's behavior is really only indicative of their own stuff and never about you. It's always some sort of something in you that kicks up something in them. And so it's not really about, it's about what's going on in there. It's their vibe. It's their thing. Yeah. So when somebody is not sort of reciprocating, or somebody is not kind, or someone is not warm, or somebody seems to always take and rarely give, again, I just think that person maybe needs more for whatever reason. Or when they're unkind, they've had a rough go that I might not know about. And because I know that sometimes I feel ragey or awful or angry or whatever it might be. And though the way it manifests in me is I try to sit with it and deal with it. And that's where movement comes in. And I try to exercise and sort of deal with my feelings. For others, it's harder to handle. And so it comes in the form of they're being unkind or nasty or whatever. And I try to sort of deal with those kind of people and those kinds of experience with as much compassion as I possibly can. Because again, it's not really about me.
It's not. And yet in the moment, sometimes I forget that. I
Of
have to
course, no,
admit.
I mean, it's human. I mean, people
Mm.
are flaky and you're very direct and you're very on it. I think you had to reschedule this one time and you and your team were so like, we're sorry, and I was like, whoa, like you had to reschedule. Like it's not a big like reschedule.
I know.
It's like
I just take commitment so seriously.
so do I, but everybody might have to, like, that's life and that's
Yeah.
totally okay. And it's because you're responsible and a doer, and not everybody's wired that way. And yeah, of course, there are times that people don't follow through. I mean, follow through is one of those things that I cannot stand when someone doesn't follow through. That like really gets me. But again, I'm like, not everybody's built the same way.
Yes, and you're right. It's more about them and where they are in this moment
Yeah,
than really anything else. So let's talk about, you mentioned movement. Let's talk about the
sure.
movement.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
here's what I love about it. As somebody who spent 4 years in college, like a lot of people suffering from an eating disorder,
Mm,
every time you post about movement, you are very clear that it's not about your pant size, it's not about the
no,
number on the scale,
no.
it's about how you feel in your
Yes.
body. It's about how
Yeah.
movement is good for mental health and how mental health then is good for your body. And I know that this came out of you losing what, 80, 90 pounds?
Yeah. So it's, depending on what high weight I feel like thinking about. Yeah. It's
I've
70, 80,
seen
or
70,
90.
I saw 80, I saw
Yeah.
90,
It's
and I was like,
all,
oh.
and they're all accurate. It
Mm,
depends on what year and what I was feeling. And probably from my heaviest non-pregnant weight, I think I must have had a 4-year-old was my younger child. I think that I was 90 pounds heavier than I am
mm.
today. But but then I had already lost 20 pounds, so I don't really know what weight to say anymore because it was different and different things happen throughout the years and weight goes up, weight goes down. But
Yes.
today I'm probably 90 pounds less than my all-time heaviest. But I would say it took me about, gosh, close to 50 years to start to realize that exercise was for something other than weight. And that's not to say that I didn't exercise all along. I pretty much did, with maybe before I started this daily practice of movement, maybe I took off a year of regular exercise. I think I just had it, and sort of the havoc it wreaked on my mental state because
Mm.
of how I looked at it. And once I reframed it, not even knowing really that I was reframing it, my life changed. It really changed. So that's why I talk about it every day. I haven't missed a day of posting in over a year when I exercise or when I move my body, because I think that if I could find a way to love moving my body and crave moving my body and long for enough time to take as long as I want to move my body, then anybody can, because I hated it so much. I hated having to walk upstairs to get something for my kids. That annoyed me, that I had to walk up the stairs. Now I'm like, let me go get you what you forgot. I mean, I'm still annoyed by the ask, but let me go run upstairs and get you what you forgot. I felt like exercise was punishment, because my whole life with going up and down with my weight and feeling like I was less than, because I was never built like an athlete. I was never built like a dancer. There was a lot of sort of back and forth with my mother about the shape of my body. My mother, who was my biggest fan in the whole world, but for my body shape, I think because it reminded her of her own, and it
Yes.
freaked her out, even though she was thin and had, I'm sure, different eating disorders that weren't sort of known at the time.
Yeah.
But I also think that coming to terms with this idea that most of us have issues with food in our body. I like to say like 99% of us have issues with food in our bodies. And then the other 1% that say they don't are lying. Because with women, like that's just certainly at a certain age, that's kind of how it is. But the minute I separated exercise from what I weighed and exercise from what I ate, it was like an incredible gift because I could see and feel what the benefits of it actually were. And I still diet, I still watch what I eat, and it's a forever journey. I mean, you never stop. I don't, especially if you've been heavy and then lost weight, you have to always think about it and work on it. But I don't allow exercise to really be a factor in my food behaviors. It can't be.
Does that former person still live inside your head?
I think the former person lives inside my head on days that I do too much. So where I have to temper myself is when I get sort of like, you know, there are days that I can go and go and go and go and go because it feels so good to do it. So like I can, and not that I'm every spin class enjoying it. No, I'm a normal person. So sometimes I'm like so annoyed in the middle of a spin class that I want to stop. And I'm like, no, I'll feel better after. But on days that I will walk, I do 10,000 steps every day. That's my non-negotiable, is to get 10,000 steps in every day. And that metric came from a nutritionist named Kim Shapira. And that happens to be a really easy thing for pretty much anyone to do if you can walk. If you can walk, you can get 10,000 steps. You don't have to sweat. You don't have to do it all at once. Between the time you wake up in the morning and the time you go to bed at night, it's just not hard to get 10,000 steps. I promise you. It's walking 10 minutes every hour. It's just not walking slowly. Like you don't even have to work hard at it. But on days that I get my 10,000 steps and then I'm like, I'm also going to ride the bike. And now it's a nice day. Let me go outside and walk another 5 miles just because for fun. That's when I have to sort of check in because that backfires because that makes your body get inflamed. So it's like not good on any level. And B, then that can screw me up because then the next day I'm like, did I do enough? You know, so I try not to. I try to make sure I don't overdo it ever, and just kind of do what I think is good for my body each day.
I'm fascinated that that the person who lives in your head only lives there when you get tired, when you've done too much, because you spend time with a lot of celebrities. You interview a lot of celebrities. They are, you know, all about image and skinny and all the rest. So it's, you know, I remember reading a billion years ago. Was that show? Not Beverly Hills 90210, Melrose Place, where the woman who, Courtney something or other, who was on the set with Heather Locklear, said that she went from being like a size 4 to like a size 00 during that time because she's just surrounded by such skinny people that she actually gave herself an eating disorder.
Well, I'm not saying I don't get triggered by things that I see.
I would be triggered like crazy.
I mean, I of course I do. I mean, I have to take a step back and know that the right size for my body is the right size for my body. It's not the right size for someone else's body. There are girls that are way skinnier than me and girls that are way fuller than me, and each one is beautiful in their own way. My head does always sort of go to the place of, should I be smaller? Should I be smaller? Should I be smaller? But I've also had this weird thing that happened at this age that I recognize when I'm too small for me, I start to look like a boy. And at 51, that's not great. I'm not meant to be a size 0. I'm not meant to, you know, I get very bony up here and I'll always have a belly. I'll always have a belly because I have skin and I haven't had a tummy tuck. And I think that sort of the struggle is universal. I mean, the struggle is for all of us. So yeah, I mean, I'll get triggered by people who are jacked and in perfect shape and teeny tiny, but I also then know that my head is in a much, much, much better place than it was when I was 5 pounds thinner than I am now. You know, there's those numbers. We all have numbers in our head. And though I'm certainly healthy 5 pounds thinner, if I get to a certain number, that's when that like thing happens that anyone who's had issues with their food and their body. And I never had like I always joke with my husband, I'm like, it's like annoying. Except when I got really, really heavy, I've always been like either just like a little bit disordered with my eating or a little bit, you know, so like when I was very, very heavy, I wasn't eating boxes and bags of Oreos at one time. Like I wasn't a binge eater. I was just, I guess, eating all day long or not knowing when I was eating, but it was never a dramatic thing, which I think is what was also so frustrating about it.
Yes.
That it wasn't like I was just constantly putting away whole pizzas. Now, did I put away a whole pizza? Sure, because everybody can. Like, that's the other thing. Like, everybody can eat a whole pizza. And if you say that you just can't, you're lying. You might choose not to, and you probably feel full, but we can all do it. And so, but there is a number that if I get to a certain low number for me, which might be a high number for somebody else, my head gets wigged out. And then the whole game is to fight to stay there and to get lower and lower and lower. So I don't do it. It's just, and also I want to be able to enjoy my life and have a meal with my husband, or eat French fries when I want French fries, or eat candy. I like candy. And if I want to be like super, 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 super thin, then I really can't eat much. That's just like the reality. That's when you've been heavy and then you're not, you really can't eat much. So, and especially at this age, but sort of back to the movement thing, I didn't explain how I went from hating it so much to then loving it. I don't think I explained sort of the steps. Hold on, let's see. I don't know what just happened here. You coming back?
Yeah, you said that you went from I don't want to I don't want to go upstairs and get the I don't want to go upstairs and get the thing that they forgot until
wait. Oh, there you are. Okay. So yeah,
you were saying you went from I don't want to go upstairs. It's too hard to go upstairs and forget the thing you forgot. So yeah, I'm happy to do it. But what happened in between?
Okay. Do you hear me now? Okay. What I was going to say was that I don't think I explained how I changed my thinking about moving my body and how I got to loving it. And I'll try to do it quickly because I'm always long-winded. But I've always had anxiety. I've always been somebody who worries a lot. I mean, a lot. And so I think what happened was I'd been reading a lot about how when you have anxiety and when you have depression and when you have mood issues and perimenopause, the mood issues, my God, they are just never ending. It's really hardcore. But I kept reading that exercise helps, and exercise helps, and exercise helps. And I was like, oh, I can't, it helps with stress. Exercise helps. And so I was about to go away on a family vacation.
There must be another solution.
Right. Well, so I was about to go away on a family vacation with like what's not just the immediate family, like the extended family vacation. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to commit to moving 30 minutes every day to see like if it was my mood. That was the first thing I did. I just made like a small commitment to move every day just because I wanted to see. It was like an experiment. Would I feel better if I did that emotionally? And it had, again, nothing to do with my weight. And I think starting there, it like built upon itself, and really giving myself no other goal and no other rule. It didn't matter if I sweat, it didn't matter my heart rate, it didn't matter what I did. And that was the start. And I started to feel better. And I was like, wait a minute, this really works.
Oh no.
What?
Oh shit.
This really works. And and I didn't love it yet, but it was bizarre because I was like, this really helps with stress. Like, people aren't lying. Like, this is real. And so I kept doing that. And then little by little, my body and my brain started to really crave it. And everything just improved. My sleep improved, my mood improved. And no, it's not perfect. I cry, I scream. But I go much more toward taking a walk when I feel agitated rather than eating potato chips. Now, do I sometimes have potato chips? Of course. But I find that I can pretty much take the edge off of an awful frame of mind if I change my state by moving my body. It just works. And again, if like I could fall in love with moving my body, anybody can, because I don't think anyone hated it as much as I do. And now I'm so hell-bent. I'm hell-bent on protecting it, that the joy of it, that I don't do anything I don't want to do. So even if I know someone's like the best trainer ever, if it doesn't resonate with me, I'm not doing that workout. Or I don't want a personal trainer, because the minute someone tells me I have to do something, I want to tell them to F off. Now, that's my own issue. That's nothing to do with them, like we were talking about before. But I'm not letting anything get in my way of loving that feeling of moving.
So there's a little bit of a
I
theme
lose you
here,
again. There
right?
you are. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of a theme here where you have an idea, you want to create a product, it gets you excited, you start doing the exercise, you start to see some results, it gets you excited, right? You like get into radio, it's becomes this really interesting thing where you it's almost like you are incredibly ambitious, but also
Hmm.
super gentle with yourself. And I think that's really interesting because I think so much of the entrepreneurship culture is all about like rise and grind and, lean in and hustle porn, right? Like you got to like work, 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 work. And if you're not, I saw some Grant Cardone gif the other day that was like, if people around you are telling you to slow down, you're surrounded by the wrong people. And I was like, well,
Hmm.
maybe, I don't know. Like
Right.
we have this idea that entrepreneurship has to be brutal and abusive to ourselves, but it seems like
Yes.
each of your journeys has also, you've also protected yourself on them a bit.
I think that, and I'm sure that you've had your own stuff. We've all had stuff.
Sure.
When you experience real suffering, when you lose somebody you love, or you see someone you care about really suffering or struggling, or you go through your own whatever it might be, your own loss of whatever it is, I think that the bullshit dissipates. The bullshit goes away, and the need to suffer for no reason goes away. And I think that happened to me when my mother died. And I think that that's what started the concept of wellness for me as well. Like, I think the reason I could start dieting then was because at the time I was like, I have like two options. I can live my life this way unhappily, or I can choose to love myself enough that I want to take better care of myself. And that was like the first time in my life that dieting didn't feel like deprivation. It felt like a choice. Like I wanted to count my calories. I wanted to feel better. And it's again, that reframing, that shift. I don't want to be in a toxic space. I don't want to do anything that's going to make me unhappy. And I say this because lots of things are going to make me unhappy that I can't control. So why not take the things that I can control and let those be sort of as positive and uplifting and as good an experience as it can be. And look, I have a really strong work ethic. So I know whatever it is that I'm going to do, that hustle's already built in. Like that's just part of that is in my DNA. But I don't want it to have to be negative anymore. Like we get one life. So and enough in life is going to kick our asses. Our daily choices that we get to make don't have to add to that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more about that. And, I am very clear that I traded in my eating disorder for counting calories and counting points in Jenny Craig. Like I know that I turned in one control freak thing
Sure.
for another control freak thing. And
Okay.
now I'm athletic and I'm control freak about like how much protein I get in and how many,
But
what the
and why
weights
is
look
that
like.
bad? It's not, I
Yeah.
don't know that obviously an eating disorder, I saw a woman on Instagram, and I won't say her name, who's clearly in the disease of anorexia. And it's really awful to see. It showed up in my feed. And it's horrifying. Obviously, that is not okay. And if that's
Right.
where you are or somebody is, that requires a psychiatrist and inpatient and real help.
Yes.
But if you have issues with food, which forever most of us will, or you had an
Right.
eating disorder in college, I don't know that healthy means you have to never think about what you eat or care about your body size and shape. We've become distorted in our country in terms of this diet culture versus body positivity versus this versus fat acceptance versus, I just feel like, why can't it be what you want it to be for you? Like, you're allowed to care about your protein intake and you're allowed to care whether your pants fit. I mean, I don't know that that's a bad thing, to care that your heart is working the way it should in your body. I think that's a good thing. Obviously, anything taken to excess is problematic. And if you have a history of an eating disorder, you deal with that and you work on yourself, which I know that you do. But I don't know, Jenny Craig's really helpful for a lot of people. And counting points, WW is a phenomenal plan. I mean, that teaches people how to eat. The formerly known as Weight Watchers teaches you how to eat. That's a great plan. Macros, if you want to count, fantastic.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I did this ridiculous exercise thing in the beginning of the year called the 75 hard, which
Oh, I know all about it.
it's stupid. It's terrible.
Andy,
It's like,
whatever his name is.
oh,
Yeah.
Frisella. Yeah, it's the worst
Yeah.
thing ever. But I did it because a
Yeah.
bunch of my other, authors,
Wanted
people, friends
to.
around the country were doing it. And I was
Yeah.
like, all right, I'll do it with you. But
Give it
the
a
idea
whirl.
of it is like drink a gallon of water a day. Great. Do a diet, whatever your diet is you choose, whether it's macros, whether it's Mediterranean, whether it's paleo, whether it's WW, who
Yeah.
cares? Do a diet every day. Work out twice a day. Okay, fine. I would like work out hard in the morning and then I'd walk in the afternoon. Fine. All of it made sense except for the no rest days. Hoorah, 75 straight. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing ever. Oh, and also no cheats, no sugar, no alcohol. And all I could think of is if I do this thing for 75 days and at the end of it, I haven't learned how to actually incorporate having a dessert or having a glass of wine, then I'm actually not teaching myself anything. So the idea that we can live in our life, and if it works for you, it works for you. As long as the trend is healthy, then great. Who cares? But this culture, I feel that so deeply, and I'm. It's funny because you and I, we're the same age. We grew up with, Cindy Crawford and Christy Turlington, and skinny as a role models. And now young women get Lizzo and J Lo and
Whole different kind of
Williams
thing.
and like
Gorgeous
big
girls.
and curvy and strong. And I'm like, yes, it's so fantastic.
Yeah, it's much better. Look, you gotta, like you just said, you find what works for you. I mean, I do every so often, I'll do this thing called Prolon, and I posted about it. And if anyone wants to go, they can use my code is just Jenny, and it's like $50 off. It's great. But I love this. It's like a 5-day fasting mimicking food plan. And for me, that works. If I need a quick, I've eaten my fair share of, like when I turned 51 and I ate a cake this big and pizza, I needed to like reset myself. So that's what works for me. But I don't think you have to have, anyone has to do what works for me. Like you have to do what works for you. Like I don't know. I don't judge any process. And that 75 hard, that Andy Frisella thing, people who do it, they love it. I don't know if you can hear me, but it scared me. The Andy Frisella thing scared.
It was a little over the top, right? It was a little over the top. But when I turned 50, I know why do I keep losing you? Maybe you'll come back. Let's see if she comes back. Well, let's see. I have Lisa, I have Brenda, I have people who are watching. I'm glad that you're here. I'm sorry that Jenny is dropped. I think her Wi-Fi maybe fell off. I don't know. So I will show you guys who are watching my bunny eyes, which are so cool. These are her glasses. They just kind of do this thing where you can tilt them down without taking them off your face. And you can like take this thing off. So you can like lean over and look. Okay, she's back.
I was just saying that I think the Andy Frisella thing, I think is I don't know if you heard me say, I like Prolon, this 5-day fast.
Yes.
But the Andy Frisella thing, I'd love to be able to do it, but I know my psychology, I can't. I can't commit to 75 days to one workout outside, one workout inside. Like the minute I'm told what I have to do, I want to wring your neck. No, that is not going to work for my head. So I don't do it. But like, I think it's so cool that you can.
Well, here's the thing. I had a bunch of friends who were like, "Hoorah, 75 hard," and I was like, "No, I'm going to do the 75 LGO," which means you live in San Diego. You can have a workout outside every day. I live in Boston. No, thank you. It's 20 degrees, and I'll freeze my tits off. And by the way, my muscles won't be warmed up. I'll get injured. I won't be able to. It'll be worse for me. And we have the election coming up, the inauguration day. I'm going to drink a glass of champagne, and I'm turning 50 in the middle of this. I'm going to eat a sheet cake because what is the best dessert ever on the planet? It's supermarket sheet cake.
They're really good. They're really, though I'll tell you, the best cake ever is from Sweet Surrender in Bakersfield, California, and they ship all over the country. And their funfetti cake is out of control. Their Oreo cake is out of control, and you get it with sprinkles all over it.
And write that down.
Sweet Surrender, Bakersfield. I've been getting cakes from them for 10 years, and but I agree with you. Do it your way. I think giving yourself the freedom. Honestly, like the fact that you can do that, you're doing just fine. Your recovery is just fine.
Yeah, well, I
Because,
mean, I think this is being north of 50, right? Like you go through, like
yeah,
I consider my 40s the fuck you 40s. I'm like,
yeah,
this is who I am. I mean, like I'm not getting any worse. I'm not getting any better. Maybe a little bit on both sides, but basically this is me. And if you don't like me,
it's all right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's all right.
I feel that way. I definitely feel more acceptance all around
Yeah.
at this age. And also, I've just made friends with all the stuff that I have. My husband used to say to me, honey, people don't really ever change all that much fundamentally. And he's kind of right. I mean, you could change little bits of you inside, like you hate exercise and you like exercise, but like our core is pretty much our core. And if you're somebody who's always had anxiety or always had issues with food, or maybe we'll always have those things, but like you can make friends with them.
Yes.
So that's what I've done. I've made friends with my stuff, and it makes life much more bearable to be able to look at it and be like, oh, I know this part of you. This part of you wants to rear its ugly head today and make you feel really, really, really bad. So what are you going to do about that? And often it means I'm going to have to sit with it, or I'm going to have to go get on my bike, and I'm going to have to go say to myself, well, what am I trying to tell myself today? And then in like my lowest moments, you know what I tell myself? It's going to pass, because the feelings always pass. And unless you obviously clinical depression and all those things, again,
Sure.
like before, get help. But for the most part, the feelings are going to wax and wane. And so if you can sit with it a little bit, you might like find out some stuff about you that will make you feel a little more in control and a little bit better.
Yeah, Adam Grant has a new book out called Think Again. And in his book, he says maybe one of the greatest things I've heard in the last few years, which is emotions are our first draft.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, that's
my God.
right.
I mean, when you fire off an email because you're having an emotional response to whatever it might be, and then you go, fuck, I need to delete that email I've already sent, and you can't.
And you can't.
So that's always like, take a breath. Like if you're having feelings, do not respond to whatever's provoked those feelings. Don't respond to mellowed out.
I think that your approach, which is to be attached to the work ethic and not be attached to the result, is really where the mental health resides, because the work ethic is I'm going to work as hard as I can on my radio show. I'm going to work as hard as I can on my social media identity, where people know me as this person who's inspirational. I'm going to work as hard as I can on these incredible BunnyEyez glasses, and I'm going to work as hard as I can on the relationships that I have. But you're not attached to I'm going to get that star, because if you were super cagey and clever, you'd be like, I'm going to have every makeup artist and hairstylist to celebrities get my glasses, and then they'll give them to their people. Like you could have been clever in that way, but you did it in a way that was true to you.
I can't do that. It just doesn't, it's not how I'm wired. I don't know. I also think like you look at if you look at any sort of the successful people, or like those sort of roadmaps to getting there, the one thing in common in every one of those books is the everyday doing the work.
Yes.
You have to do the work. There's no getting to where you want to be, whatever that might be, without doing the work. It takes 10 years to be an overnight success. I mean, that's just real. So I think now with BunnyEyez, we're way more positioned to scale our business in whatever magical way we can than we were 2 years ago. So I think I don't need to push that. Where's the rush for any of it?
It's funny. I was just texting with my old personal trainer this morning, who is literally at Olympic trials right now for rowing. And he's the one who got me into rowing in the first place. And today's race was the prelims, where you like figure out who's going to be in the finals later in the week. And like, it's the race of your life until the next race. And he said, like, it went fine. We did well enough. We're going to the next stage. And I texted back and I said, isn't it such a metaphor for life that you don't get the medals for, for the most important races, right? Like these are the ones. It's like what you do every day. You don't get the medals for showing up at 5 a.m. for practice every day. You get the medals for doing the big thing, but it's really, the medals are earned, right? The success is earned in the everyday practice, in the everyday relationships, in the everyday kindness to yourself.
And kindness to people around you.
Kindness to people around you.
Like, what does it cost you to be nice to somebody, to lift someone else up? Like nothing? Makes you feel good.
Nothing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Jenny, I could talk to you all day. I think that you are incredible. I've loved getting to know you over the last few years. How can people find more about you, more about BunnyEyez, more about all the great stuff you're up to?
So I'm at Just Jenny Hutt on Instagram. That's where I spend most of my social media time. It's the most intuitive for me. And BunnyEyez is BunnyEyez.com. And then my radio show is Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Stars 109, and then on demand. And then every Wednesday on my radio show, it's dedicated to Weight Wednesday, and those shows are also up on the SiriusXM app, so people can access the Weight Wednesday show at any time too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.